The darkroom door burst open with a crack of cold air and a spray of raindrops, jolting me from my concentration. I stumbled over a stool, knocking a mug of old coffee onto the concrete floor. Hot liquid hissed as it met the developer tray, my boots left dark footprints in its shallow pool. I shook wet hair from my face and yanked the lamp's red safe light into place. My pulse hammered as I reached for the enlarger switch, and froze. Frame 27 glowed ghost white on the paper tray, her and the photographer, bodies pressed together as if the studio lights were set just for their clandestine embrace. No, this can't be real. The metallic tang of coffee lingered in my mouth as I swallowed hard, steadying myself against the workbench. The low hum of traffic beyond the heavy door rumbled like a warning. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, still wet from the storm, and found an anonymous text waiting. Check the negatives. No sender. Just 6 words that hovered in my head as I slid open the envelope marked, Family, October Session. 4 rolls lay inside, their celluloid surfaces slick with fixer. I peeled back the paper and fed roll 1 into the spool, my daughter's gummy grin, my forced smile, her radiant laugh captured in crisp black and white. By roll 3, my hands trembled, but I forced myself to continue. Then came roll 4, one perfect portrait after another, until the final strip revealed the truth in stark relief. Frame 27, magnified by the enlarger's lens, showed her hand curled around his neck, his cheek brushing the hollow of her throat. Their eyes half closed, they were lost in a moment that never involved me. My breath caught. The coffee mug teetered on the edge of the counter. I slammed my palm down to keep it from toppling. The scent of fixer, acrid and chemical, burned my nostrils, mingling with the fading aroma of stale caffeine. Another text buzzed. I'm sorry it had to be this way. The word stung worse than any slap. I pressed my forehead to the cool metal edge of the enlarger, steadying my racing thoughts. Anger flickered, but I quelled it. There was work to be done. With deliberate calm, I flipped the safe light switch off and turned on the white bulb overhead. The room blazed in harsh clarity. I transferred the print into the developer tray, each motion precise, controlled. The image swirled into view, every gray tone an indelible accusation. I lifted the wet print and draped it over a wire rack, its droplets falling in time with my heartbeat. The rest of the negatives lay on the counter, waiting to be catalogued, preserved, and weaponized. I straightened and exhaled, letting the storm's echo fade behind me. My wedding photo, tucked into my shirt pocket that morning, felt heavy against my chest. I withdrew it, silver frame gleaming under the harsh light, and turned it face up on the workbench. Its image, us smiling beneath autumn leaves, reminded me of what had once been real. Beyond the darkroom door, the apartment was silent. I pocketed my phone and wiped developer from my fingertips. In the searing light, I saw my reflection in a chrome tray, eyes dark, jaw set. The shock had passed, in its wake came resolve. I would catalog every frame, preserve every roll, and transform this proof of betrayal into the evidence I needed. The path ahead was clear, controlled, systematic, and entirely mine. I sat at the kitchen table the morning after the darkroom revelation, sunlight slanting through half-open blinds. The stale scent of fixer still clung to my clothes, clashing with the sweet aroma of the pancakes she loved to make on Sunday mornings. I stared at the empty plate before me, memories layering over the present until the room began to tilt. Remember the first time we danced in this very kitchen? She'd cranked up the old vinyl record player, Ray Charles, Hallelujah I Love Her So, and I'd swept her into my arms. Her laughter echoed off the cabinets as we spun between the refrigerator and the counter. I held her close, tasting the warmth of her skin, feeling the world fall into perfect harmony. Now that harmony felt fractured. I traced the edge of a syrup stain on the table and flashed back to our anniversary last year. I'd surprised her with breakfast in bed, a plate of blueberry waffles and fresh fruit, and she'd pressed a kiss to my forehead before whispering, "You make ordinary moments magical." That morning, she lingered over her phone, giggling at something I couldn't see. I remembered glancing at her screen, just long enough to see a notification pop up from an unknown number, before she flipped the phone face down and squeezed my hand. I swallowed, the metallic tang of coffee grounding me. I opened her laptop, still warm on its charger, and found her profile page open in the browser. The URL bar ended with a string of letters I didn't recognize. My thumb hovered over the trackpad. Was that the same account name that had sent the text in the darkroom? No, I told myself. Don't chase ghosts. But doubt had taken root. I recalled the evening a month ago when she worked late and came home smelling faintly of cologne, woody, not hers. She'd leaned in to hug me goodnight, and I'd caught the scent, paused, then kissed her cheek and retreated to the couch. And the restaurant receipt for two that I found in her purse last week, an upscale bistro we'd never visited together. She'd laughed it off. Business dinner with Karen, she said, tossing the paper into the trash. I retrieved it the next morning, slipped it into my pocket, and studied the time stamp, 9:12 p.m. Nothing about business would require a nightcap at a white tablecloth restaurant. Beneath those pleasant deceptions lay tiny fissures. I had ignored them, labeled them stress, work, nothing to worry about. But now, looking at frame 27, I knew each small lie had been an iceberg tip. I reached for her phone, locked but familiar in my hand, and held it as though it were a fragile artifact. The passcode came to me in a flash, her mother's birthday and our wedding day combined. I tapped it in and opened her message app. Most texts were mundane, grocery lists, school reminders, coordinating playdates. But between them were icons I hadn't seen before, a small camera emoji, then a heart. I clicked in. Chris, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Her, me neither. I'll bring the prints. Chris, you always make them so beautiful. Her, it's easy when the subject inspires me. Winking face. Chris. The studio had called him Chris, our freelance photographer. I scrolled up, looking for context, but she'd deleted the previous messages. I thumbed back to the downloads folder, a new subfolder named Session Extras. An honest title for hidden content. I minimized the window and opened our bank statement PDF on another tab. Charges from the photography studio, the flat fee for our family shoot, then two additional line items labeled lab services and extended editing. I highlighted them in yellow, October 3rd and October 5th. Neither date aligned with anything I'd scheduled. My chest tightened, but I didn't panic. Instead, I printed the statements and the snippets of chat I could recover. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound as I taped them to a corkboard I'd once used for our kids' school art. Now, evidence replaced crayon drawings, a constellation of red string connecting dates, receipts, and half-erased memories. I dialed Lisa, my sister-in-law and confidant. When she answered, her voice was soft. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "I need to know, did you ever see her linger with Chris after the shoot?" I kept my tone even, masking the crack in my voice. There was a pause. "She did," Lisa admitted. "She said she was helping him set up lights. But I saw them whispering behind the backdrop. I thought maybe he was giving her pointers, you know." "Did she ever mention you'd get some extra prints afterward?" I asked. "Yeah, she told me she'd pay for more than the basic package. Seemed like she just loved the photos." I thanked her and hung up, folding the phone with a calmness I barely felt. Each new detail fit neatly into the puzzle: the cologne, the restaurant, the extra editing fees, the clandestine messages. I wasn't an idiot, I'd just chosen to trust. But trust, I decided, was a luxury I could no longer afford. I gathered the printed statements and messages, stuffed them into an evidence binder, and snapped it shut. The pact I made with myself was quiet but fierce. I would document every deception, preserve every shred of proof, and build my case brick by brick. There would be no more ignored red flags, no more whispered justifications. I would see the full picture, and then act. I exited the kitchen, closing the door gently behind me. The apartment felt emptier, every echo a reminder of what she'd hidden. In the hall, I paused at the corkboard. The photos of our family, the three of us smiling beneath autumn leaves, stood beside the string of receipts and screenshots. The juxtaposition stung. I turned off the lights and walked downstairs to the front door. Outside, the late morning traffic murmured. I paused on the step, breathing in the cool air, tasting resolve instead of betrayal. The next chapter would be deliberate, structured, and unflinching. I would reclaim my life, and our daughter's future, with unyielding precision. And in that moment, I knew, the past was now evidence, and the future would be justice. The morning after I finished assembling my binder of receipts, screenshots, and recovered messages, I sat at my desk with the wedding photograph facing me, our smiles frozen beneath a canopy of spring blossoms. I traced her face with my fingertip, as though memorizing it one last time, then replaced it upright and reached for my legal pad. Today's agenda was already written in my own neat hand. 1. Meet with attorney. 2. Notarize affidavits. 3. Preserve photographic evidence. 4. Install home security cameras. 5. Draft custody and asset proposal. 6. Counseling appointment. I exhaled and crossed off 1. Meet with attorney. My brother, Mark, met me at his firm just after 9. We settled into his cluttered office, models of contract law and family court lined on the shelves, case files fanning across his desk. "You've got substance here," Mark said, thumbs riffing through my binder. He tapped the page showing the bank statement with 2 extended editing charges and the torn-out print of frame 27. "Family court will see this for what it is, deliberate deceit." He handed me a sheaf of forms, a petition for custody modification, a request for temporary restraining order to protect our daughter's routine, and blank affidavits for our friend Lisa and the photo lab technician. "We'll need notarized statements from both," he advised. "And let's get those camera metadata reports, timestamps, geolocation, file histories. The more tech detail, the stronger your case." He tapped a photo of our house on his screen. "You should install cameras in the hallway and living room, areas she routinely passed through. Motion activated, with cloud backup." By 11, I'd signed under oath that the invoice represented unauthorized services, and Mark printed 2 identical affidavits. He led me down the hall to the firm's notary. The notary's stamp felt like an exclamation point, official, irreversible. My heart thumped as I handed over the completed affidavits, then slid them back into my binder. At noon, I returned home. The smell of fresh coffee beckoned as I set the binder on the kitchen table. I poured a mug, the metallic tang a familiar anchor, then powered on my laptop. I logged into the photography studio's online portal, using the contact email listed on their receipt. Navigating to the My Orders section, I downloaded the full contract, an agreement outlining basic session fees and optional add-ons. Scrolling past the standard package, I found the extended editing clause, which she had checked and signed online. I printed it, circled her digital signature, and taped it beside the bank statement on my corkboard. The studio's terms made clear that extended editing covered only color correction, not staging private shoots. I highlighted the disparity, proof that she'd paid for something outside the original scope, clandestine intimacy, not family portraits. At 2 o'clock, the security technician arrived. He carried a small black case of devices, dome cameras, a DVR box, and wiring. We met in the living room, its hardwood floors still gleaming from last spring's refinish. "We'll mount one here," he said, nodding to the corner above the staircase. "It'll catch anyone coming or going. And here." I pointed to the hallway leading to our daughter's room. "Perfect," he agreed, installing a second camera discreetly under the ceiling molding. He connected both to a cloud-based system I accessed on my phone. Test feeds flickered to life, clear, wide-angled, time-stamped. I watched as my own reflection waved at me. "Set it to record on motion," I instructed. "And send me notifications in real time." He showed me how to adjust sensitivity and hide the indicator light. In my pocket, my phone buzzed, a notification from camera feed, test motion, 3:14 p.m. I tapped it open, a crisp image of my empty hallway. Satisfied, I thanked him and handed over his invoice, which I promptly filed under legal expenses. By 4, I drafted the custody and asset proposal. I opened a fresh document and began. Petitioner proposes the following temporary arrangements pending hearing: primary residential custody vested in petitioner, supervised visitation for respondent, school and extracurricular decision-making authority to remain with petitioner, joint legal custody with petitioner to retain sole physical custody. I outlined asset divisions: the house in my name, the joint investment account split 60-40 to cover legal fees, her DSLR and studio equipment forfeited as restitution. Beneath that, I included a calendar grid, alternating weekends, holiday schedules, and video call windows during her custodial weeks. I proofread it thrice, adjusting language to sound firm yet reasonable. Next, I added a paragraph on counseling, requiring her to complete marital betrayal therapy and photographic ethics workshops before regaining unsupervised visitation. Every clause was deliberate, each designed to protect our daughter while holding my wife to account. At 6 p.m., I met Carla at our favorite cafe. She'd been my rock since college, steady, fierce, and completely loyal. We sat in a booth by the window as the sky turned pink. I slid the custody proposal across the table. "You've thought of everything," she said, sipping her tea. "Therapy requirements, clear visitation blocks, you're building safeguards, not just revenge." I nodded. I want her to see the consequences of her choices. But above all, I want our daughter safe. Carla offered to introduce me to her counselor, Dr. Patel, who specialized in family trauma. I penciled in an appointment for tomorrow morning. Back home, I pinned the custody proposal to the corkboard beside the receipts and metadata printouts, then stepped back to study my work. The board, once a collage of family photos and children's drawings, now displayed evidence and strategy, a roadmap from betrayal to justice. Night settled over the house, and I silenced the camera's indicator lights. In the living room, I retrieved the envelope of negatives from my desk drawer. Rolling the fourth film into its plastic sleeve, I labeled it, Exhibit A, in fine point pen. I placed the sleeve beside the ledger I'd created, a chronological spreadsheet of all charges, sessions, and documents with links to their stored locations on my encrypted hard drive. I sat on the couch, coffee gone cold, and stared at the binder and corkboard. The path ahead, court hearings, negotiations, perhaps a trial, would be arduous. But for the first time since I saw frame 27, my chest felt light. The discreet whir of the DVR box was a promise, nothing would happen without me knowing. I closed my eyes and whispered to the wedding photo on the table, "We're getting there." The night was mine to plan, each hour another brick laid in the foundation of our new life. And in that measured calm, I found a clarity I'd never known before, that resilience is born not from outrage, but from unwavering purpose. The lawyer's conference room smelled of polished mahogany and faint lemon polish. I slipped in behind my attorney, Mark, carrying a slim portfolio and the brass key to our home. She was already seated, eyes glassy, as if waiting for the verdict. I set the portfolio on the table and placed the key beside it, its weight an unspoken reminder of everything she'd surrendered. Mark cleared his throat. "We've laid out the exhibits," he said to her. "Would you like to begin?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The hush was thick enough to echo. I flipped open the portfolio to Exhibit A, the framed print of frame 27, glossy and unyielding. "That," I said, voice calm, "is the photograph you paid to stage, where you posed for happy family images but instead staged your affair." She swallowed. Her gaze flicked from the image to the key. I held her stare without flinching. "Frame 27 shows you and Chris," I continued, embracing under the guise of art. "The bank statements and studio contract," I tapped the next section of the portfolio, "show you knowingly funded it. You chose his lens over our vows." Her breath caught. She looked down at her hands, trembling. Mark turned a page. "We also have sworn affidavits from the lab technician corroborating that role, and metadata reports pinpointing the date, time, and camera serial number." He slid the notary-stamped statements toward her. "You're asking me to admit to an intentional betrayal," she whispered. I placed my wedding photo face down on top of the metadata printouts. Its gilded frame clicked against the table. "Yes," I said softly. "You intentionally hired him for extended editing, then let your feelings develop. You betrayed your commitment." Her shoulders slumped. Tears glistened in her eyes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the man I used to be, the man who might have begged or pleaded. But that man was gone. She began, voice shaking. "No more excuses," I interrupted gently. "This is not about anger or punishment. It's about truth and safety, my daughter's safety." I lifted the brass key. Its ridges were worn smooth by years of use. "This key," I said, setting it on the table, "once opened our home to love. Now it represents the privilege you forfeited. I will keep it safe, just as I will keep her safe." She buried her face in her hands. The lawyer cleared her throat again, signaling them to proceed with paperwork. As she signed the stipulation acknowledging willful abandonment and agreeing to my custody and asset proposals, I watched each stroke, a final stroke in the portrait of our broken marriage. When the last document was signed, I stood and gathered my items. The portfolio snapped shut, the key lay still on the table. I nodded to my ex and the attorney. "I wish you well," I said, voice steady. She looked up with red-rimmed eyes but said nothing. I turned, collected the key, and left the room without glancing back. In the quiet hallway, I held the key in my palm, its cold metal grounding me. I exhaled, feeling the tension drain. Outside, the autumn sun flooded the lobby, warming my shoulders as I walked away. The confrontation was over. The truth was laid bare. And in that revelation, I discovered the final piece of my resolve: calm, precise justice. The morning light in my daughter's bedroom was soft, dust motes dancing in sunbeams as she climbed into my lap to read our favorite story. Her head rested against my chest, and I felt the brass keys weight in my pocket, a solid reminder that our home belonged to us now, undivided and secure. Later that day, I parked outside the courthouse for the final time. The signed settlement lay in my briefcase: full physical custody granted, structured visitation for her mother pending completion of therapy, the house deed and camera gear transferred solely into my name, and a modest financial stipend set aside for counseling expenses. Every clause I'd drafted, down to the requirement that she attend photographic ethics and betrayal recovery workshops, had been accepted without contest. Walking away from the stone steps, I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The crisp autumn air tasted like possibility. I thumbed my phone to disable the home security notifications for a moment and slipped it back into my pocket. No more motion alerts for footsteps that weren't mine, no more suspicion. That evening, I set up my laptop on the kitchen island and opened a blank document titled "Develop Truths." My first entry laid out the anatomy of betrayal, how I turned film negatives into evidence and preserved my daughter's world from her mother's deception. I wrote about resilience born from reason, not rage, that calm reckoning is more powerful than any outburst. While I typed, my daughter painted with watercolors at the table, her giggles punctuating each sentence. I glanced at the corkboard where evidence once hung. It was empty now. In its place, I pinned a single photograph, a candid shot of the two of us on our last hike, her wide grin framed by crimson leaves. Later, I emailed my brother and Carla a draft of the blog post, thanking them for their unwavering support. I scheduled my first counseling session with Dr. Patel under Dad's time on the family calendar. And as night fell, I stood on the porch with a cup of herbal tea, listening to the quiet of our yard, the swing gently swaying in the breeze, the porch light casting a warm halo. I closed my eyes and placed a hand over the locket I'd bought for myself, a gift to mark new beginnings, its tiny clock face ticking my reclaimed hours. The stillness contained a promise: I would build a life defined not by her betrayal, but by the steady beat of integrity, love, and justice. Tomorrow, I would share Develop Truths with the world, offering a roadmap for others trapped in their own darkrooms of deceit. But tonight, I simply stood in the glow of our lamp, father and daughter safe together, and let peace settle around us like a photograph's perfect frame.